Okay, good morning also from my side. It's nice to see you here. So I have the honor to actually guide you through the FPF's work from 2019. I'm going to take the luxury to also introduce the FPF in more general terms. What's the mission of the FPF? What are we doing and why are we doing that? And talking about why are we doing that, let me just begin with Jane's favorite publication from last year. And that is that one. That is the publication that is labeled a satirical contribution, nonlinear endocrine no-dose effects towards a new paradigm in toxicology. And if you can stomach to read through that, it's a very vain attempt of humor, which I really didn't enjoy that much. They really try to basically make fun out of histopathologists, make fun out of statisticians, make fun of toxicologists. So they basically go all across the board in order to ridicule the science on endocrine activity, on endocrine disruption. It's a bit painful. And then the acknowledgement, this study was supported by the EU Framewash program, Abysmal, EU Ineptias, etc. So I was really struggling with that. It's certainly not my type of humor. My main problem or my main concern is this is an anonymous contribution. So if you look at the authors, it's I am important and results, haha, okay. So we could put that aside and we could basically say, yeah, okay, somebody tried to be funny, sometimes scientists aren't, never mind. But the problem is this was accompanied by an editorial, and that editorial is actually signed by the editors-in-chief of an academic journal. And they conclude with the outstanding contribution is a must-read not only for experts in the field of endocrine disruption, but for all of us who relentlessly pursue scientific truth in our areas of research. And I think that's where it's crossing the border from bad humor to bad science. The problem is this is really sort of trying to put a thin veneer of maybe there is actually something on the stuff that is in that satirical contribution. So this, for me, is a typical example where we're going to hear more about that later, but it's raising doubt about the science where people have been putting a lot of effort and a lot of energy in order to understand the science on the endocrine system, on endocrine disruption. And I think this is a way of academic mudslinging that makes me sort of cringe, really, and it's really problematic. And from that perspective, taking that as a background of what's happening in a scientific journal, it's extremely refreshing, and I really enjoying being part of that when we're looking at what the Food Packaging Forum is doing. This is a publication, it's a commentary, so it's inviting people to take part in a conversation, to think about where we stand, to think about how can we move things forward. Everybody has his or her own opinion and reasons for that, but it's moving the conversation forward. Scientific challenges in the risk assessment of food contact materials as a commentary. So I think that is basically why we need organizations like the FPF in order to move the conversation forward. I think that's really critical. That is also reflected in the mission statement of the Food Packaging Forum. You can see that we have a bit of a scientific background because it's far too long and it's hard to read. But the basic idea is that the Food Packaging Forum enables stakeholders to generate knowledge. So the Food Packaging Forum is an enabler to help other people to have an informed conversation and then reach their own conclusion in the frame of scientific knowledge, in acknowledgement of scientific knowledge gaps, but helping to basically incorporate science into the discussion that we're having. And of course, with the aim to facilitate a better protection for public and environmental health. Just for the sake of completeness, this is the Food Packaging Forum, and 99.9% of the work is done by the team of the Food Packaging Forum. It's actually only 6 people who are devoting far more time and effort into the FPF than they are paid for, so thanks a lot for that. We have the Food Packaging Foundation board. That's Martin Scheringer, who just presented before me, myself, Peter Hieber, and Pete Myers. And then we have a scientific advisory board, which is international, with scientists from different disciplines, all trying to add their perspective to the work and trying to help us that we're not derailing into something that is just not scientific enough. So that's the setup, that's the structure that we're talking about when we just say the Food Packaging Forum. So what does the Food Packaging Forum do? So on the one hand, we have the routine activities, and it's a steady stream of information, basically flagging things that are important and linking to the original sources so that everybody can make his or her own informed opinion. It's the bi-weekly newsletter with information of events that are happening in science, in academia, in regulation, and in industry. We have dossiers that are a bit more in-depth compilation of issues that are relevant for the area, for example, niasis, BPA, and etc., etc. You find all that information on the website. Webinars on selected topics, selected events, where we're inviting speakers to give a webinar for a group of people on selected topics like food additives here, the prioritization issue, chemicals and plastics, chemicals and plastic, chemicals and composition. Okay, the title needs a bit polishing there. But that's basically the typical routine output that the FPF is generating. The FPF is very much involved in participating in organizing conference, workshops, and events like this one, but a lot of others, and I'm going to pick out 2 examples from last year in a second. Just to give you a number, the FPF presented at 26 events last year. A lot of them are invitation only, which also shows that the FPF is actually having an impact and actually moving the conversation forward. It's of course about food packaging, food contact material related issues, but it's a very diverse audience. It's a very different audience. So it's a scientific audience, it's an audience of regulators, industries, or the general public. You know that plastics at the moment is really an issue that is discussed back and forwards also in the public sphere. And then last but not least, participation and organization of scientific research projects. And I'll also show you 2 examples of that just in a second. The 2 most important events for the FPF in the last year was, on the one hand, the Unwrapped conference in California on the health risks of plastics and food packaging chemicals, where the FPF was one of the organizing organizations. And the second one was the Plastic Health Summit, which was an invitation-only big event in Amsterdam in October, so just a couple of weeks ago, how to take care of the next generation, where Jane was giving one of the keynote presentations. And that is online. It's also linked from our website, and I can just encourage you to take a look at that presentation. Pete Myers from our board also presented there, if you want to get an overview of how we are communicating things, what our positions are on those issues, and of course we are always welcoming your feedback. So if you have any comments, just get in touch with us. We certainly want to discuss things. The main challenge for us is, as our sort of front and center of our mission statement, is to take science on board, to discuss things from a scientific perspective. Given that those conferences and a lot of the organizations are having there's a huge emotional element in there. You can just look at how the conference flyer is laid out here. So for us, the challenge is always to sort of see that within all that emotional discussion, which is all well and good, we still need to take care that the science is acknowledged, that the scientific knowledge gaps are acknowledged, that we know where we stand, because that's, at least from my perspective, the only way to move things forward and to think about what can we do about problems that we're facing. Without the scientific backbone, we are going to discuss things until the cows come home, but we're not really getting anything forward. So that were two challenging conferences in that perspective, but I think, Jane did a really good job there. Again, just watch the video, it's all online. Let me just quickly touch upon two of the projects that the FPF was organizing and running. This one is the project, the HCPP project. We still need to work on finding better acronyms for our projects. So the HCPP project is about hazardous chemicals and plastic packaging. It's funded by the MAVA Foundation. It was finished just a couple of months ago, literally a couple, so 2 months ago almost. We had 7 international partners, and all those cats were herded by the Food Packaging Forum. So the Food Packaging Forum was the main contracting partner to the MAVA Foundation, was organizing the project from the technical perspective to the scientific work. We have a short website online also on that project, so I encourage you to take a look at that. There will be more information about that project also coming online. So let me just quickly guide you through that project. So what have we been doing there? The idea was first to basically take stock, to just try to get an idea which chemicals are associated with plastics. So basically just a stock taking, and just is in big inverted commas, just taking stock about what chemicals might be associated with plastic. Knowing that the plastic chemicals or the plastic associated chemicals are there is just the first part of the story. The question then is, what do we know about their toxicity, about their hazard profile? What do we know about potential impacts on human health? What do we know about potential impacts on the environment? So what we started doing there, or what we did there, is we took a look at the hazard profiles and we started to actually group the compounds. And for me, I was one of the partners in that project. One of the take-home message for me was actually how little we actually know about most of those chemicals. I mean, you have bisphenol A in there, and you can drown in the literature there. So that's one thing. But we had we still have a couple of thousand of chemicals in that inventory, and we only have basic information for not even 1/3 of those chemicals. So we are facing a big gap in our scientific understanding of, is there a case to answer? Is there a problem? Is there a potential cause for concern, or is it okay? And I would hazard a guess that if you're looking at such a humongous amount of chemicals, it's going to be perfectly okay for some chemicals and quite problematic for others, and everything in between. So there's still a lot of work to be done. We picked the phthalates as a case in point because we have, in the phthalates, we have DEHP, where we know a lot. We have other phthalates where the knowledge basis is far less. But the important thing is we also have monitoring data. So we actually do not only know that those chemicals are associated with plastic, but we also know that humans and environmental compartments like rivers, lakes, soils, etc., are exposed to those chemicals. And we try to get an idea about how problematic are those chemicals from the perspective of public health and from the perspective of environmental health. And I'm not going too much into the details there at the moment. So let me just basically say that we are, in the sake of transparency, also trying to publish things as soon as possible so that people can read up on things, that people can try to find their own way. So this is a non-peer-reviewed but still referenceable publication where we are outlining the prioritization approaches that we used in order to get an idea about the hazard of those chemicals. This one is then the follow-up peer-reviewed publication with all the underlying data, where we published the database, the chemicals that are there, the data that we found, the final results of that ranking, and all of that. So this is the publication that was published 2019 in Science of the Total Environment. Xenia was carrying that baby home. She really put a lot of time and effort into making that database available. And people are have almost immediately started to use that database and started to put that together with monitoring data, to use that to say that these are the compounds that we need to understand better, these are the compounds that we are finding, so how can we put that together with the hazard information. So that is the project that finished, and finishing also means we had the final event there. The final event was taking place in Gothenburg in that nice little plastic dome here, so that was a really nice venue for a project on plastic-associated chemicals, with a lot of different presentations, a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions and everything. The video, the summary there is also online. I again encourage you to watch that, and if you have questions, get in touch with us. There will be more peer-reviewed papers coming out very soon. This is the follow-up project. We're still not much better in finding acronyms, so that's the HCCH project, Food Contact Chemicals and Human Health. It's a slightly smaller project with 3 international core partners, a bigger scientific advisory board. Again, the FPF is leading the activities. That's running 2018, 19, and actually 2020 also, sorry, that's my typo there. The idea there is to look at which chemicals are migrating from food contact articles, to look at what do we know about actual occurrences in humans, so look at the human biomonitoring data, and then basically collect the adverse human health outcomes in order to, again, look and identify, basically to try to find from the thousands of possible chemicals, those chemicals that really matter, where we might need to step up our risk management measures. That project is ongoing, so I'm not going into the details there. We need a bit of space and time to just generate the interim results, and we're going to publish that as soon as we can. And we are actually going one step further in order to keep things as transparent as possible. The way we are collecting information and the way we are trying to extract the information from the literature, all that study protocol is already published so that people can see what we are doing, why we are doing that, and again, look at weak spots and come back with comments if they have any. So the protocol for the mapping exercise is available for everybody. So again, trying to keep the science front and center of the activities there. Okay, so that is just a brief glimpse and a brief overview of what the FPF has been doing in 2019. It's a range of, say, routine activity that is routinely generating knowledge and information for different audiences, organization of workshops, dissemination events, but also getting more and more involved in scientific projects that really pushes the envelope forward in terms of our understanding of food contact associated chemicals. And with that, I would just like to point out the website in case you you don't know where it is. So that's the website where you find all that information. It's constantly updated. Bookmark that website. It's really a nice information source. And that's the summary of the people from just yesterday when we had our scientific advisory board meeting. So a lot of those people are here. Get in touch with us, discuss things, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the workshop. And with that, I would like to finish. Thank you for your attention.